Hey everyone, it's Tom Kratz, and one of the best things about doing this business, working with different real estate investors all over Southern Ontario, is you just stumble into the best people. And this one stumbled into us. Petr Kafka is the vice president of leasing at Strathallan. And I had never heard of Strathallan, but apparently these guys know their shit. Am I allowed to say shit? I'm not sure. I hope there's no kids in the car. Anyway, what these guys do is they handle all the leasing for all the malls that you see as we drive along the highways and stuff. So I'm talking everything from like the big malls, like a Yorkdale Mall, Sherway Gardens, Oakville Place, Mapleview and Burlington, that kind of stuff, to the smaller strip malls. And they do some stuff that is really interesting. They actually take mismanaged malls and basically flip them. So instead of flipping like a house like you'd see on HGTV, they're flipping malls. They will buy these mismanaged malls, get them up to par, increase their value, and then sell them off to different pension companies. And this to me is absolutely fascinating. We've never played in this part of real estate before. So Peter was nice enough to come on the podcast and break out how this all works. So that's what we talk about. Great guy. We get into his own real estate investing and his own journey and how he got into Canada. It's just another story of why Canada is so great, because some of the best people from all around the world end up in Toronto, in Canada and in Toronto. So wait till you hear his story. So Peter's a great guy. Love chatting with him. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And listen, if you are listening to this, we do talk about a little bit about the destruction of the middle class and what our kids are going to do and how people are going to be able to afford properties, because the population growth trends in this area are astonishing. And we actually put together a report that maps Stats Canada data, income data, against Toronto real estate prices. And when you see these things mapped against each other, it is jaw-dropping. Like the chart doesn't even make sense. And I call this the destruction of the middle class. How we've all been sold the idea that you go to school, you get a good job, and you get a good income, and that's how you get ahead. Well, it's kind of a load of crap, because if you don't have some assets in your life, you are not getting ahead. You're barely keeping up. And we extrapolated some of this data forward. So when you see it going forward from 2019 to 2055, if your jaw didn't drop when you first saw the data, it definitely drops when you see this. So that's just a projection what we did, but to me it's fascinating information. You got to take a look at it if you haven't already. You can get that at nomoremiddle.com. That's www.nomoremiddle.com. So you can get a copy of that report right there. And with that, let's get on with the show.
Are you ready to live life on your terms? Is it time to take charge? Real estate, business building, the economy, health and nutrition, and more. It's the Your Life, Your Term Show with Tom and Nick Karadza. Are you ready? Let's go.
Okay, we are live with Petr Kafka. Peter, how do I pronounce your last name?
Kafka is good.
Kafka. Petr Kafka. And you told me it's a Czech last name?
Yes, it is Czech.
From the Czech Republic.
Bounce.
Not a
Czech.
Slovakian last name.
No.
Czech last name. I want to be very clear. It's not like when I was a kid, when it was Czechoslovakia. There's the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic?
Slovak Republic.
Slovak Republic. All right. So you got to tell me, how does somebody like yourself get in? Because you have an interesting story. Somehow you have a PhD. What is your PhD in?
Pilot high and deep. That's
pilot high and deep. No, that's because every time I talk about just PhD, so technically you're a doctor.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
My dad told me if somebody asks, "Is there a doctor in the house?" never raise your hand. You'll end up in jail.
Yeah. Or if you're on the airplane, is there a doctor in the house? We need someone to help. But you have a PhD in, is it what was some immigration studies or what? No, what is it exactly?
Yes, it's in political science, immigration policies. Yeah.
Political science and immigration policies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it sounds very deep.
It is. Yes.
You're taking us side. Don't worry, we're not gonna beat you up on this podcast here. You're good to go. Bring the mic nice and close to you. There we go. So listen, Peter's going to break down for us, because many investors who are listening to this have never heard of buying malls, plazas, strip malls, putting pads on these strip malls to increase the value. And by the way, there's a mall near where I live in Oakville, kind of 8th line and upper middle area in Oakville, that strip mall must be the highest average rent of any strip mall. I don't care, because they just slipped it. There's hardly any parking to begin with in there, and they just plop down a Shoppers Drug Mart, like right in the middle of the parking that's left over there. And that Shoppers Drug Mart I know is going to do a ton of business. And I know how much rent those guys pay in there. They don't tell me specifically the dollar per square foot, but they all complain. And it's packed. So whoever's owning that particular mall in Oakville, I know they are just raking it in. So, but we're going to get to that in a second. What I wanted to talk to you about first is what age did you come to Canada? Walk us through the journey. How do you come into this country? How do you go to university and get this PhD?
That's a long story, but I'll abbreviate it. My first exposure to Canada was actually through my great uncle, who came to Canada as an immigrant in 1948, escaping the communist putsch. He was a Royal Air Force pilot, and we all know what happened to those fighting for the Allies. So he left for Canada, and we haven't really had any contact or much contact with him for 50 years. And then when the Cold War was starting to cool off, we started connecting with him, and he eventually visited in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia back then, and then in 1993 we visited him for the summer here. But my real first-hand involvement with Canada was when I was writing my dissertation on Canadian federalism, and i.e. why countries like Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and Russian Federation, or Soviet Union back then, why they split, and while Canada is still together. So that was kind of what motivated me to come to Canada, because my supervisor was a Canadian hippie who came to Czechoslovakia in 1968, and he became...
So you were writing this over there?
Over there,
under
that's right.
A Canadian, like a Canadian professor of some
That's
sort.
right, a fantastic guy, and he was very into first-hand experience, and he said, Peter, if you want to write about Canada, you have to go there. And of course, I didn't have the funds to go, so I wrote to Canadian Embassy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and eventually they got back to me and they said, sorry, we don't have any scholarships, but we can give you a temporary work visa. So I borrowed money from Royal Bank of Mom and Dad for the airfare, and then I got 700 Deutschmarks. And in 1999, I landed at the Pearson Airport, and I had a return ticket. And 6 months later, and I had two email addresses. One was for a professor at the U of T, and the other one was at Queen's University. And I very quickly realized that I don't have first and last month's rent. My 700 Deutschmarks will not get me, to stay. And I had 3 days prepaid at the Global Village Backpackers. So I had to make a move to Kingston very
Global
quickly.
Village Backpackers.
Yeah, it was.
I think you told me. Is that the one on Yonge Street?
I think it's gone now, but it was at Spadina and Queen, I believe.
Okay, got it.
Was really
Okay, so you land at Toronto Pearson,
right?
And you make your way down to downtown Toronto, Spadina and Queen.
That's right.
And then from there, you're emailing these professors.
Yeah, two guys. I met with the U of T prof, and it was just. It was just too overwhelming, I think, both for him and for me to kind of negotiate the landscape of City of Toronto. And I kind of realized I can't get first and last month's rent. I cannot live, literally, and I have to stay here for 6 months. So I went down to Queens, and the professor I worked with over there, Will Kimlicka, was a fantastic human being and a leading scholar in the field of immigration and citizenship. And he hooked me up with a library card and let me work in his office, actually, and I got a restaurant job, and it was, I survived the five months, did research during the night and worked during the day, and then I went back, did another master's at Central European University in Hungary, and we kind of liked the student lifestyle, my girlfriend back then, now wife, and I, and we said, well, let's extend our youth by another 5 years,
that's how you got the PhD.
That's right, and so we applied to U of T, and we were very fortunate to get full 5 years worth of funding, and worked as teaching assistants, but then halfway through the program, I kind of realized that. I'm burning out and I don't want to be an academic. So again, we didn't have the money for me to go through the MBA program, but I kind of felt I need to gain financial literacy because my parents were experiencing financial difficulties back home, and I needed to grow up. So So I started taking courses, and as I said, was auditing the courses, not taking them. Knew how to study and be cheeky, so I went to talk to the individual professors, and they let me sit in, be fly on the wall, and do the homework and listen what they had to say. And so I took corporate finance, accounting, marketing, and one of the courses I took was in real estate development. It was taught by this billionaire owner of Smart Centers, the developer that brought Walmart to Canada. And he must have liked the fire in the belly.
Sorry, he was teaching that course?
He was teaching that course.
Okay, so that then you approached him or whatever?
Well, I approached him before I started taking the course, and after the course, I said, "Look, I really enjoyed what you were presenting here, but I would like to learn more." And I took the course actually again. I think the fact that I took it again and he saw me again and probably could relate to the.
And who was he?
He is the owner, Mitchell Goldhar. He's the owner of Smart Centers. So,
like the guy who's putting all the big box Smart Centers all across the GTA.
Correct. Well, he sold the company now, or the
it's owned by a REIT of some sort.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Smart REIT. But I've only great things to say about him. He gave me a chance to join the company. I took part of their executive rotation program, so it was for all the graduate MBAs that qualified. They go through a 2-year program where they get really condensed.
But I thought you didn't have an MBA.
I didn't, but as I said, I went through PhD was considered as an equivalent.
Okay, so you had this PhD, so you thought, okay, fine. You've suffered enough. Whatever that PhD is in, you're good to go. Okay, got it.
But anyway, great experience, great people there, and then 2008 rolled over, the crisis came in, and so I decided to stay on the leasing side because I figured that there will always be vacancies, and you can you'll have a job, and so I worked on the Walmart anchored power centers and the development of these types of assets. Then when Zellers went bankrupt, I switched over to the enclosed mall portfolio because I wanted to learn that side of the business, and I also felt that there will be a lot of inventory, a lot of shopping centers that were built in the 60s and 70s that will need kind of refurbishing, and whoever knows how to do that will be a very marketable person. So I did that for 3-4 years, and then Strathallan, my current employer, came knocking, and it's a boutique company that deploys money of pension funds, and they buy mismanaged shopping centers, and they buy them, fix them, and sell them for profit.
So they basically, the way most real estate investors think about flipping houses, they basically flip mismanaged shopping centers.
That is correct.
For good returns.
Correct. So it's a vertically integrated company. So they have their.
What does that mean, vertically integrated?
That means
you're well into the corporate speak now. You're well. I'm having flashbacks. Vertically integrated. So they handle everything.
Turnkey.
They do the They fill it with the new tenants. They renovate the property. So they drop a new pad, because you guys use that language of putting a new pad, which is to me a new, like, building on the lot of the plaza.
That's right.
Like a new retail establishment.
So vertically integrated means that you're investor. You give a company like this money. They find the assets. So they have acquisitions team. They have a construction development team that fixes the asset. They have property management team. They have a leasing team which backfills the vacancies and increases the revenue. We have accounting.
Pull this right into front of you. Yeah, there we go. No, it's good.
We have accounting. Entity within our company as well. We have tax advisors.
So Strathallan is privately owned?
Privately owned.
Privately owned. Their customer is who? Like, who's buying these? So they are selling these to like REITs?
It's
pension funds.
Pension funds.
Private pension funds.
No, public pension funds.
Public pension funds.
But we have, and that's the business where we'll be potentially looking to grow as well, is as taking private, high net worth individuals' money and investing it in these value add
So
properties.
Strathallan buys the strip mall, the rundown strip mall, fixes it up, and then sells it to a pension fund who wants that as part of their the real estate component of their portfolio.
That's right.
Okay, got it.
And these would be the riskier types of real estate holdings. So every pension fund has certain allocation of from their capital towards real estate. Typically, it would be 10 to 15% of their total capital allocation.
Those guys are missing out, man. Good. Don't tell them about real estate. 10 to 15% is
Right.
enough. Let them have everything else.
And out of that 10-15%, 70% would be for something that is very stable, like Yorkdale or Sherway Gardens, the AAA assets, and some of it would be for allocated for the riskier assets, and that's what we deal with.
Okay, and that is what specifically, smaller strip malls in
yes.
smaller communities?
It's in secondary, tertiary markets. Yes, smaller communities.
Okay, so like a strip mall in Brantford, Ontario.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
So, yeah, and the rationale is that you are the reason why they're parking money with us is because we can achieve higher returns than what the AAA properties would.
Because those are bid up and so much competition, the price on it, so the capitalization rate is driven down because people are just everybody wants a piece of Yorkdale Mall.
And you're buying it half vacant, you fill up the vacancies, you bring in quality tenants, you de-risk the property, you secure longer term leases with these tenants, and that de-risks the property, it compresses the cap rate, so the final value would be great.
And I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but they consider this a risky piece of real estate because it's a strip mall. Like what is it like? Or give me the breakdown. What's not risky real estate? Yorkdale.
Well, part of it is
because to me, not really risky real estate is like a residential single family home.
Well, part of it is location. So the big five, the big cities, where the job growth is and demographic growth is. So that would be one aspect.
Okay, so income and population growth.
It would be the tenant mix as well.
Okay.
Right now, and the type of asset, enclosed
so
malls.
Like when Cheesecake Factory is in Yorkdale, Cheesecake Factory can pay their bills, so they're a good.
It's also is it an enclosed mall? Is it not? Is it a power center, or is it food store anchored strip? So the food store anchored strips are perceived as the least risky, just because they're necessities based as opposed to discretionary based. And so the rationale is people always have to do their groceries. They'll go. They'll need to do. You have a dollar store. You usually have a discount, or you have a hair salon, nail salon, medical.
Got it. So then, if it's not anchored, so if there's no grocery store, no shoppers. Nick, by the way, has joined us. Nick, can you say something?
Yeah, I'm looking at this new holder. This thing's crazy.
Watch out though, man. It's spring loaded, and I haven't adjusted the springs properly.
It's going to smash me in the face?
So it's not going to smash you. You know it's going to smash Peter.
Oh, okay.
So if you're not careful with this thing's going to whip over and smash him in the head.
Well, I wish we had this on video. So sorry, I'm interrupting. Go ahead.
No, but so if it's food based, it's pretty safe. What about a Shoppers Drug Mart? Is that considered a grade A anchor?
It's more. It's like when you're buying stocks, right? When you're risk averse, you're buying stocks that are focused on the necessities as opposed to discretionaries. If you want to get into riskier things, then you would get into discretionary. So fashion is a prime example of a discretionary type of use, and they're getting punished right now by e-commerce, by the fact that people are cost sensitive. So if you're to go with a tenant that is kind of fashion oriented, or from that cohort, you'll probably go with somebody like TJX or Winners, Marshalls, somebody who is a discounter, right? To make sure that they're here tomorrow, and it's a reflection of what's happening to the society. I mean, you guys are talking about the no more middle, right? And that's really what we're seeing.
So all these malls are just going to basically services, food based. You basically have your shawarma place, your pizza, the bank. a daycare.
Sushi's everywhere.
Yeah, sushi. You're going to have maybe an RBC or like I said, a bank, and you're never going to have in a small strip mall anymore the menswear store, the shoe repair guy, the guy who sharpens your skates. Like all those kind of places are gone. The ladies store, the ladies fashion store is gone. The little jeweler, the little local jeweler that used to be there, those are all gone.
No, I wouldn't.
No, Peter, let's go negative. Let's just say they're all gone.
It's just every use. You really have to on top of it and kind of see how these uses are changing, right? So any fashion will always be around. It's just the tenants who are not really don't have omni-channel offering. They don't have online presence. They don't participate in social media. They don't cater to all, 5 senses. Like these people.
Yeah, the small, like you said, the local community guys are harder to come by. There's a place, and Tom, maybe you mentioned at the mall, by one of the malls by our place, there was like a linen store that moved in, I don't know, 18 months ago. And I walked by that store. I'm like, how the heck? And it's a strip mall, like it's an outdoor strip mall. I'm like, how the heck is this place even still here, even after that short time? I've maybe ever seen one person in the store in all the times I've walked by, but I think it's those places. They don't really kind of. I guess some people put them in if they have to, but there's not much value add there.
Again, the art of commercial real estate is looking at the location, and the location is typically determined.
Pull this right in front of your mouth and turn it if you want. Here, pull it like this. There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Well, now we got stereo sound.
Yeah, there we go.
So the everybody says location, and for a typical strip center, the key factor determining whether it's a good location or not is obviously access to a major artery. But if you're dealing with a neighborhood plaza which is convenience based, most of the tenants you have in there are your drugstore, your bank, your dollar store, your Tim Hortons, your grocery store. It will be all about proximity to the roofs, to the residential. So is that how you guys? So I want to back up and ask you some questions about your history in a second. But is that how you guys will look at an opportunity to flip a mismanaged strip mall? It'll be something close to what you call roofs, close to residential housing. But let's say, like, if you're out in Brantford, what are you looking at? You're looking at it doesn't have the population base of Toronto, but it has a growing population. It doesn't have the income levels of Toronto, but it has good income. So you're looking at good income, good population, and someone has just not put the right tenant in there. You guys feel with your leasing team, you can step in there, make the facade of the strip mall nicer, and put in better tenants? That's certainly part of it. Renegotiating some of the operations contracts, like snow removal contracts.
Okay, so reduce expense. So you're going to increase income, reduce the expenses.
That's right. Looking for new, adding density, adding more gross leasable area. Converting, if you have an enclosed mall, maybe turning the enclosed mall into a strip center, reducing the operating costs. We look for assets that have lower under market rents, so that's another example of adding value through our relationships with some of the national tenants, securing longer term leases with them.
Okay, so you're doing all the little things that compounded together really change this asset.
Because what you're trying,
so you're bringing your years of experience to play here.
Very much, and understanding how the tenants operates, because you can, at the end of the day, it's a very small industry. So if once people, and similar as in your business, once people trust you, and I'm talking about tenants trusting the landlord, they know you can deliver certain kind of product in a time frame that you said you will deliver it, and to the specification that they require, and you can, if they know that you know how they operate, you will not do anything that would hurt their operations in the way they make money. So that's. So
is that the first thing you guys do when you buy a strip mall? You can communicate with the existing tenants of like, hey, look, we got your backs here.
Sure. Yes, and a lot of it is really leaning back on our history with that tenant and saying, remember, we're even recycling some of the leases that we have with them, the precedent forms, because at the end of the day, everybody's so busy. They need to do 30 store a year. Wouldn't you want to deal with a landlord that is not painful to deal with. You have already established precedent form, so it's a fairly straightforward process to conclude the transaction.
And then what happened? What happens if you screw up? Like if you screw up on a residential flip, you're kind of screwed because if you think you're going to buy a property for $1 million and you're going to sell it for like $2 million or whatever, but the market changes or you just can't build in that value, you can lose all your profit. You might even go negative, right? Maybe you can only sell it for 1.6. You thought you were going to sell it for 2 million and all the profit you thought is wiped out and it's over. In a strip mall, is it the exact same risk?
Well, it is in a sense that you can, if you overpay for an asset, then it's you have to amortize it over a longer period of time. So you have to find a vehicle or a way of holding it for a long period of time.
Okay, like anything, yeah.
That's right.
The long term. If you can survive the long term, you can crawl out of your mess.
The one thing that you cannot control is the bankruptcy of your tenants. Sometimes you had Target. Everybody thought they're rock stars. No puns intended.
No, but everybody thought they were going to be great. Yeah.
And then they had great covenant on the leases, and if you were smart, even the U.S. entity, and then it went sideways, and they spent a lot of money improving the spaces to the tenant specifications, and then 2 years later.
So what happened to that? So like there's a mall in Oakville, I think Hopedale Mall. I think they put in Target. And I think they fixed up the store and stuff. Right. What happened? Did Target just escape from all those leases unscathed?
Well, I think a lot of the information was kind of proprietary.
Yeah, but if you had to guess, Peter, you know what happened. You could just tell us what happened. What do you think happened?
Well, it just depended on what type of covenant you had on the leases. If you had just the Canadian entity, then that entity went bankrupt. And part of the problem was that the Canadian entity was liquidating the inventory, and the profits went back to the U.S. mothership. So you would have it just.
Do you think anybody had a U.S. covenant on the lease?
I know of landlords who did, and the prudent ones did.
Okay, got it. So some did, some didn't. It sounds
right.
like.
Yes.
Oh, geez. Okay, I want to back up just for a quick second. You said in the Czech Republic you did some kind of paper or something on why Canada didn't break up when the Soviet Union did and when Czech Republic did. What's the answer? Why didn't Canada why hasn't Canada broken up? Why is Quebec and Ontario, why are we still all friends, and why in these other countries did it break up? What's the answer?
The answer is Canadians have, it's my 30-second...
Yeah. Give me the 30-second answer. I don't want to go through years of research. Just give me the 30-second answer.
What it comes down to is trust, and the fact that Canadians, the different parties who are kind of fighting with each other, and just whether it's the Quebecois and the Anglophones or the First Nations and the majority society or the individual provinces and their regional interests, they do trust the the judicial system, the legislative system, and they believe that it's not rigged in favor of one or the other. The problem with a lot of the Soviet Union, the Yugoslavia, and Czechoslovak system was that it was heavily favoring the central powers, the central power being Communist Party. So when it came to the renegotiating the constitutions, or the way people were to cohabitate again, the different ethnic groups, people felt that it was favoring one or the other, and a lot of the breakups were over discussions. What will be the new way of negotiating our differences? What will be our new constitution?
That's interesting. Okay, got it.
And the other reason is that Canada's long-term 150 years worth of liberal democracy and kind of civility, and also the fact that there's plurality of alliances here. It's not, you don't have just Anglos versus Quebecois. There are times when the Quebecois coalesce with First Nations against Ontario. There's Alberta again in coalition with Ontario against Quebec, and so it's not, you don't get stuck in kind of beaten tracks of us versus them. It's more fluid and porous.
And you don't have histories of just outright slaughter between the people. Like, I don't know, between the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic, but am I saying it right? Slovak Republic?
Yeah.
Is there a history of just like annihilation of those two people?
Not really. I mean,
okay, so it's not like the Croats and the Serbs who just go at it.
I mean, there it was even more complicated because you had islands of different. It was not the ethnic, the ethno-geographic layout of the community was not kind of as homogeneous as it was in Czechoslovakia, because you would have pockets of Bosniaks and Serbs, and
it was a disaster.
So
it was a disaster.
So couple that with
with land disputes, mix in religion, land disputes, politics all together, and then hundreds of years of history saying that family murdered this family over here. I mean, you couldn't put more ingredients together in a smaller piece of land. Disaster.
Yeah, it was.
It's sad.
Very, very,
it's sad.
Very tragic.
Yeah. Okay, so that was just so the Czechs and the Slovaks were a little bit more cordial.
They call it the velvet divorce.
Yeah. Okay.
I got a question. I walked in a little bit late. Right? I apologize. I had to sign some checks. I'm sure some people in the office are happy that I was late, so I do apologize. But you guys were talking about the value of these commercial real estates and different tenants and stuff, and maybe you touched on it. So if I did, just ignore me and move on. LCBO and beer store. Are those like what? How are those considered by landlords? Because you'd think that those bring in traffic.
Yeah.
And you'd think that they were pretty stable as tenants because, I mean, the government, they'll just tax more if they need to make their government for LCBO, not for the beer store. They're private, right? But still, pretty big corporations behind them. Any experience with that? Because I'm thinking of this one mall with all the different tenants. And I'm like, I just wonder about those types of things.
Yeah, no, they're very much sought after. Great traffic generators, relatively stable covenants. I mean, LCBO is a great covenant. I believe the beer producers are backing the beer store as they're experiencing changes as well with grocery stores introducing beer and wine, right? So it's not headwinds free, but still great traffic generators. Now obviously there was a great kerfuffle over the marijuana licensing, who will have it, will it be through LCBO or not, and then we know what happened in Ontario.
And that was the next thing I was going to ask you. So if those ones seem like decent ones, I guess marijuana might be too new to know, because you would think that over time those things might bring in traffic to malls as well. Different clientele, I don't know. I know the beer store, like even though the supermarkets have it now, your habits, at least my habits, because for so many years I went to LCBO or a beer store, I still never think to go to like a grocery store to pick up some beer if I need it, right? So the habits are kind of ingrained. But I'm just curious what the marijuana thing. Any thoughts about that, or are people just still waiting to see kind of how the dust settles with that type of stuff?
Well, I personally think, I mean, it depends on where you stand morally. I leaving that debate aside. I think from landlord's point of view, it's great news, because there's tell me who is growing right now in this environment. So certainly great traffic generators as well. I was looking at some of the data that is publicly available through the branches that are owned by governments. So that's in Prince Edward Island. That's where government owns it, and the small 3,000 square foot unit would generate equal amount of traffic as a 17,000 square foot Shoppers Drug Mart.
Oh wow!
The sales are incredible as well, but where everybody has to see. I mean, now I'm not sure if you follow the media about the emergency room now being filled with teenagers who are kind of
overdosing on edibles.
With the edibles, yeah.
So it's. I mean, we do live in a Puritan society after all, so we'll see how the government, what kind of stance they will take towards that. But I think it's what people thought of liquor. The morning after prohibition was abolished.
Sure, yeah.
Right. So
I know if I owned the Hasty Market next to the marijuana shop that opened up, I'd be pretty. I'd be stock up on chips and pretzels, and
So to sum up this commercial real estate for someone listening to it's just done as multi-unit residential, you basically analyzing the net operating income. So you're taking all the income from a plaza. You're looking at that income, trying to increase it where possible. You're trying to get better covenants if you can. Trying to get better tenants if you can, maybe extend their leases if you can. And then you're trying to reduce expenses, snow removal expenses, landscaping expenses, whatever you're doing. And then if there's a big parking lot, perhaps you're going to put down a new pad. I don't know. I just like saying that for some reason. You put down a new pad and you're going to drop in a Tim Hortons in there, or a Shoppers Drug Mart, or a new building of some sort in there, and a restaurant. And that'll be another way to increase the income, obviously, on that thing. Sure. Am I missing? Those are the main components, correct?
Yes. I mean, you can add value through better financing as well. If you typically, and when you're buying an asset, sometimes you can either buy it free and clear, which means there's no financing on it, or you can assume the mortgage. And if you have a skillful broker, they do mark-to-market adjustment, which means if the going interest rate is lower or more than what the mortgage is, it find its way into the purchase price that you're paying for that asset. But you can, once you've
so if
purchased
the financing was crap, you're going to get a better purchase price.
That's right, because you can say, well, I'm leaving money on the table, right? Okay. And if your covenant is great as a new owner, you have relationships with banks, again, you can maybe get better financing, and again, depends on who your investor is. If they're looking for cash flow, then you're probably going to stretch the amortization period, and you'll try to calibrate your mortgage differently than if somebody's just doesn't really care about cash flow and they just want to.
Okay, and then where most of your work is done in the Ontario area, or across Canada?
We're actually across Canada. We're from Summerside, PEI, to New Westminster, British Columbia.
Okay, so I'm curious, what are you guys seeing around population trends in Ontario then? You must be looking at some data that, I know we've briefly talked about the stuff between you and I'm obsessed with this data, but what are you seeing?
Well, certainly migration towards the greater Golden Horseshoe, migration from the smaller communities to bigger communities following jobs. There is a lot of kind of north-south migration as well. People moving from the Sudburys of the world down towards the south where it's sunnier, but it's really driven by jobs. I never really thought
of us as the south, Peter, but okay, fine. I always thought we're the north, but yeah, I get it. I get what you're saying.
But it's all relative, right? Ontario as a whole is a great recipient of outside immigration. Canada as a whole is I think it's 1.4% of its population is being added through external immigration. We see a lot of movement towards Toronto and GTA, and again, fueled by job creation. I think I mentioned to you that the forecast for just that little corridor between Church Street and University and Wellington and Front Street is 80,000 jobs over the next 4 years, just through the office towers that are mushrooming over there.
So that's some commercial real estate forecast. Thinking 80,000 new jobs into that little core.
It's just looking at the office inventory.
Okay, got it. That's how they're extrapolating it. They're just seeing the offices go up, assuming that those are all tenanted with commercial buildings. That's how many new jobs would be created. With commercial tenants, that's how many new jobs would be created. That's insane.
Yes.
That's insane.
Yeah, no, that's quite.
And those are high-paying jobs.
Yeah, they're not as high paying as Silicon Valley. They're about a third or 40% of what people get in Silicon Valley, and so between Trump effect and
that's okay. We get a third about of the sun that they get in California, so I don't care that. But I understand what you're saying. Okay, and that's the attractiveness to different places like LinkedIn and Twitter and some of these companies that are down there. I think Google did. Nick, do you know if Google announced they were going to put 1,000 new jobs in Kitchener?
No, they not that I saw. Not that I saw. That's someone.
Why do we have that in our heads?
Someone that I know that works up there
mentioned they might
mentioned that's what they were looking at.
Okay.
I couldn't even. I couldn't even got that number incorrect, so I would definitely
Now
wouldn't.
we've just been spreading this number around. Okay, got it.
Yeah. That wasn't for public sharing. I tried to no.
Okay.
no. I was like, I was pretty sure that's what he said, but I forget what it was. It was early, and I wasn't sure.
And then you do this on a full-time basis and you're the leasing arm basically of what you do, correct?
Yes.
Okay. But now you're segueing into real estate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What the heck are you doing? Like, I just assume people in your situation are already in real estate for like 10, 20 years, but you kind of surprised me. You're like, well, I actually know cap rates and net operating income, expenses. I can drop in a Tim Hortons, a Shoppers Drug Mart here, but this is something that you haven't been doing for 10 and 20 years, but you're going to do this now yourself, correct?
Yes, and that's the irony of it. Because
there's been people like us, Peter, who don't know what we're doing. I've been out here doing it for like 20 years. And there's people like yourself who know, and you're sharpening the pencil and you have all these different calculations, and you're now going to jump in.
Well, I've been jumping in for the past 4 years or 3 years. But it was, you put your finger on it by saying, there's a lot of people who may be working in commercial real estate, but they don't have the mindset to really get involved personally. And I was one of them. And
well, you're busy. It's easier to do some stock market stuff. You're building your career. You don't have the time. I mean, a lot of it's understandable.
Yeah, but I think it's more than that. There's something about the mindset that we're socialized into as being groomed to be salaried employees, and that's part of the school system that we grow up.
Oh, you're just preaching to the choir now. Yeah, no, I get it.
No, but
because you're saying dealing with real estate is a little bit degrading.
Well, let me put it this way. I there are two formative moments in my life. One was growing up under socialism and kind of seeing the aftermath, like what happened when the wall came down. You basically, somebody pressed the reset button. And overnight, you change from socialism to private. So everything was state owned, and obviously the state needed to get the capital flowing. So they had coupon privatization. Everybody would get their batch of stocks. They would let people buy the state owned properties at cents on the dollar because they needed to get the mortgage system going. So I remember when, in 1989, my brother was 18 at that time, came to my parents and said, "Guys, we gotta buy this. This is," and it was, I think that the price was about $15,000 for a 2-bedroom condo, 1,000 square foot condo.
Is this where your family was living?
That's right. It's a Kingston-sized community downtown, like very strategic location. So that property, and my parents, their response, and they're smart, wonderful, hardworking people. Their response was, "Are you crazy? Only the lunatics get into debt." Right. And so, and that was not because, as I said, they would not be, savvy, but it was a complete foreign concept between the old school mindset of not being in debt to anybody and the novelty of the private ownership. A lot of people didn't take advantage of that opportunity. And
what was the price of this place?
$15,000 for a 2-bedroom. So right now it went up by 1,000%. It's $150,000, $200,000, and
today,
30 years later. In the
that's a decent return.
They continued renting, and guys, that rent went from 1,500 check rounds to 10,000. So 650%. So my mom's pension goes towards paying off just the cost of housing. So any extraordinary expense, so they live off my dad's pension basically, which is another $500, $600. So any extraordinary expense, right? It's changing tires, whether it's property taxes or they, God forbid, if they wanted to come to see us, mm-hmm. right? Can theoretically practically break their back, right? So seeing and the reason why I'm mentioning it is that they're not alone.
Very interesting historical context that most people don't have, Peter.
But Tom, the reason why it's relevant to the listeners, when I travel through Summerside, the rural communities or even urban communities in Canada, you talk to people who are in, they didn't grow up under socialism, but they have a similar mindset, right? And they're being left behind. And I know everybody's talking about the affordability crisis for the first time buyers and all that, and it is a legitimate problem. But you know what? It's going to be even harder, and the bigger problem that very few people are talking about is the elderly. They will have just think of improving healthcare. People will be living longer and longer. They didn't really have the mindset to buy assets that are generating income, so they're relying on their savings. Can you imagine the anxiety that people have or will have when they see their RSPs shrinking and shrinking and shrinking? The cost of assisted seniors housing in Ontario is $45,000, and
that's $4,000 to $5,000 a month.
A month, yes. So the concept, the notion of outliving your money is a very real thing.
In the next 20 years, we're going to see a lot of weird stuff.
After tax, $4,000 to $5,000.
So after tax, that's a good point.
Right. So even if you have additional savings, if you're taking out too much, even from your RRSP, you're getting taxed on it. It drops
I don't think.
Right?
I always think of the population growth coming. I never look at it from a demographic point of view of all the retirees, the people who are getting older. You're right.
And at least the millennials, they have 30, 40 years to adjust figure it out. Yeah. But people who are elderly or sick, that's going to be, and maybe it's the socialist
you're
talking
right.
to me.
No. But listen, there's good parts to socialism. I'm not I'm not really pro-socialist, but there are good parts to helping your neighbor, to making sure we all have health care, to taking care of each other. Like there's a really value. I don't think any one of us here wants to live in a society where if Peter breaks his arm, he can't go to the hospital because he can't get the right stuff, right? I mean, we all want that. And I saw socialism, and so did Nick, when we went to go visit our family in Europe. And the weird parts to socialism, I think, are that it's not exactly fair the way most people think of it because of the corruption that goes through the system. You would see people in Yugoslavia apply for different housing or something, and then they get approved, and they'd say, okay, you got approved for this different housing, but you have to wait like 10 years. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're approved, Peter, and your family's approved, but like you're not actually going to recognize that benefit for like 10 years and stuff. And I don't like having that kind of stuff shoved at me in a society. But there are good things to having equal access to certain social programs for everybody.
I think you want to live in a society that where people are not desperate, where people are sinking into a situation where dignity is gone. Right, so to have sustainable liberal democracy, you need to have people with stakes in the society and with.
I forgot I'm talking to a PhD in this subject. This is amazing. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Look, keep going. Keep going.
But anyway, what I was trying to say is that was extremely formative for me, and that what kind of between my Strathallan experience and seeing how we add value to properties. And kind of the financial literacy that I gained through that, and seeing.
Do you realize the advanced financial literacy that you have?
But there's so many. It's just ideas, right? Unless you start acting on it, it's nothing. It's just fan.
So what did you do? What was your first stake in the ground? You bought a condo and fixed it up?
It was a triplex and close to where we live on the Danforth, and it was. I had no idea.
You have a triplex just off the Danforth? When did you buy that?
About 3-4 years.
That's right. You were telling me you bought it and you fixed it up.
Yeah, I was even though working in commercial real estate, I had no idea what I was doing.
You're like all the rest of us. Don't worry.
So it was a very successful project. I bought it well, and to this date, I don't know why more people didn't bid on it. It needed just cosmetic changes. We fixed up the bathrooms.
Well, everybody thought it was overpriced. Here, I'll tell you why people didn't buy it. Because every year people tell me properties are overpriced. But when you can generate income on the property like you know how to, it doesn't really matter on the prices. The price specifically, it's like when you look at a strip mall. The price in and of itself isn't the whole story. It's what are the income and expenses. You just told me that. Right. So in this triplex, what was the income when you bought it? Was it maxed out?
It was two-basement, two-bedroom basement apartment for 600, including utilities. And again, like it's
Okay, so it was
it's
well under.
well under. But I didn't do any research. I was just foolish and reckless. The main floor was also a two-bedroom apartment. It was $1,000, including utilities, and the upstairs was empty. So 1,600. We fixed it up with the help of our friend. Spent $30,000 fixing up all the bathrooms and kitchens and flooring and lighting, all the kind of emotionally significant features of the house. And by I charged. I think we took the income to about $5,300 a month. It was $1,200 downstairs and the balance between.
So you took it from $1,600 to $5,300.
Yeah, so I looked at
Peter,
it.
so you can do this. I guess you got it figured out.
No, but I looked at it and said,
it looks like you're
smokes.
still freaking out. Right? You're still scared right now.
Well, yeah, those numbers are great.
Those are great returns. Yeah.
Anyway, and since then I've been looking for a similar house. I couldn't find it.
Yeah.
But
Isn't it funny? You don't know what you're doing. You took a leap of faith. It ends up being your best investment ever. Now you set the bar so high, you're not going to find another return like that anywhere. Yeah.
So at that point, a lot of my buddies started saying, "Well, I
You
want to
got the
get
touch.
in."
You got the touch, Peter.
I got to get in on the next one, and I said, "Guys, keep your money. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want you to get hurt." But anyway, there was a critical mass of people who started asking me. So I said, "Okay, I owe it to my cohort, to my peeps, to get educated." And I called up Quentin D'Souza. I started following podcasts, yours and a couple of others, and then eventually I called Quentin, and he took me on under his wing for 6 months. And with him, I learned the basement conversion. So I did that.
Awesome.
And I always try to do something new on the next project. So the next one was complete gut with the basement conversion. And then I did a couple of flips. One was a condo as well. So always something new. I'm working on a 15-plex right now with one of the principals from our office. It has 2 retail units, 13 residential units. So always kind of trying to keep
that's
it
interesting
fresh.
because we would always tell people, hey, if it's got too commercial, maybe stay away from it. It adds a layer of complexity that you might not want to mess with. But with your experience, those 2 retail are like nothing to you. That's actually comforting.
I mean, the big advantage of retail or commercial is that you can really force the appreciation very quickly. I mean, everybody says it's not get
How's
rich
that? Just on everything that we just shared? Or
Yes. So you can, number one, you're passing through virtually on the commercial side, on the retail side, everything through them, to the tenants. There's no rent control. The lender looks at the asset, not you personally, as much. So the performance of the asset, although you're
still gonna have to personally guarantee it. When
you do, but it's really your operational wherewithal that is being checked. Not so much.
Okay, good
net,
point.
Right?
Yeah. How much experience do you have? Can you handle this type of project?
And what's your investment thesis? What's your strategy?
And you can negotiate the personal guarantee, so it's
is that recourse or non-recourse? But it's the fact that you can every dollar, like let's say on a 6 cap property, so the capitalization rate, where the 6 cap, every dollar that you increase the rent by equals $20 worth of value. So
okay, I just want to walk through that with everyone. So the capitalization rate would be the net operating income divided by the purchase price. Right. So the net operating income is the income minus the expenses. Whatever that number is divided by the purchase price gives you a capitalization rate. Right. So you used an example of 6%. And now you're saying if you can now walk me through the rest of the example. So paint the picture for everyone.
So let's say you have a vacancy of, you buy a strip center, you have a vacancy of 3,000 square feet, and you sign a lease with the dentist. That dentist is willing to pay you $20 base rent. So there are three streams of income for you as a landlord if you're in commercial. One is the base rent or minimum rent. Second one is the common area maintenance charges. So that's all the operating costs there you're passing through on a proportionate share basis to the tenant. And then is the property taxes. So let's say the tenant is... let's leave aside the CAM and property taxes. The tenant is willing to pay you $20 and their proportionate share of property taxes and common area maintenance. So you have 3,000 square foot unit, which is empty. So you have $60,000 worth of annual income that as new money, right? When you capitalize that at a 6%, you have created $1 million worth of value. Obviously, there will be transaction costs.
Okay, so the income just went up by $60,000. Was that the math?
Correct.
And then at a 6% six cap rate, the value of that building has now gone up by $1 million.
Correct. You have to net off of that. You have to subtract.
We're all
going to
get into flipping strip malls.
You have to subtract from that. You're paying the broker. You're giving them some kind of tenant allowance. There's a downtime. The tenant may ask you to roughen the plumbing, so there may be associated costs with the transaction. So let's say it will probably be $30 per square foot all in. So you would subtract the cost of running.
So when you buy a strip mall or something with a potential commercial in it, the price is, they're not using a hypothetical rent amount to come up with the capitalization rate. Because in your example right now, you just increased the value by like $1 million. Mm-hmm. But wouldn't the person selling say, well, hey, I know that's vacant right now, but technically I know you could get this much, so I'm not selling it for a cap of 6%. Like, do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Because in your example, you increased it by $1 million, but I'm sure who's selling it purely vacant and not recognizing the potential?
Well, it comes down to what type of market you're in. So sometimes the broker or the seller would say, well, you're downtown Toronto, your chances of releasing
point taken. But if you're in Saskatoon, in the outskirts of Saskatoon, and it's been vacant for 2 years, they're not going to recognize that income. But you, being the savvy mismanaged mall flipper, you can take it now and find a tenant for that place.
So the key difference is, are you buying it on in-place income or stabilized income? In-place income is what is on the rent roll today.
Got it.
As opposed to stabilized when everything is leased and fixed up.
Okay.
So the seller obviously wants to sell it on stabilized. You as a buyer want to buy it on in place. If you see
in residential, it's usually stabilized because there's such low vacancy rates. Mm-hmm. We're usually buying it on the stabilized income, not on the in place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, got it. Okay.
That's why places like in Alberta, even the residential, when the oil industry was booming, and places like Fort McMurray, you bought places for cheap, and then rents just skyrocketed. People were able to turn over those buildings and either refinance or flip them because the values jumped because there was no rent controls, even in the residential space. The downside was when the industry dried up and the rents came back down. This is like residential, small town residential that was really dependent on one industry. But when the rents came back down, the value of those things dropped pretty fast as well, right?
So in that case, when you're purchasing that asset, you would actually want to go after buy it on a stabilized basis, right? Because you see it
totally
the falling knife, right? And you don't want to buy today's dollars because you know that the revenue will be lower down a few months down.
Yeah. And so, okay, so this is all then you are going to steadily add to your own personal portfolio?
Yes. So I'm doing that. I'm using it as an educational tool as well, kind of coming full circle. So seeing, what happened to my parents. Obviously, I want to, improve my financial literacy, but I also want to make sure that our kids awesome. have that. So
how old are your kids?
They just turned 10 and 7. A boy and a girl, and we get them. I mean, I'm sure their ears are bleeding by now, but because I play podcasts every time we travel to a hockey game, but you know what? They're like
so your
sponges.
Kids might listen to this then. What are their names?
Kaya and Nia.
Kaya and Nia.
Yeah.
Kaya and Nia. If you're listening to this, your father is a really smart man. You listen to him, okay? He's the smartest guy we've ever interviewed. So you make sure you listen to him.
I'll pay you later, Tom. But all kidding aside, we actually started a company named after them, Kaya and Nia Properties Inc.
Awesome.
And we're using the assets as a tool, as a kind of playground for them to learn, to gain financial literacy. And
you're somebody from academia who's actually coming out into the real world. You know what kind of rare bird you are? Do you understand how rare you are?
Yeah. I don't know. It's a good thing but you know, you roll with what you get, and we like just recently we had a situation which actually kind of only reminded me how important it is to have them around. We were like anytime there's a lender that comes to our house, I kind of sit them around the table. I made them kind of, this is what the tenants are paying. This is what we have to pay to the bank because we don't have enough money. So just, you know, in a age appropriate manner, kind of make them rehearse their math skills, but also start to understand the concept of a mortgage and property taxes and all this. But we also bring them to the showings because I want to get the social element to it. You know, when they're meeting with the contractors or when we have an open house, and we have the application form that the tenants complete, and I give it to the kids to you know, tell me, who would you pick? Like I turn it into a game, right? So. And then I challenge them, you know, because they always want to pick the person with the biggest dog, right? So not so fast, but anyway, and I bring them in because it lightens up the atmosphere, right? Like people see that we're not the heartless landlord, and I tell them that this is, you know, it's actually for Kaya and Nia that will be, or if we get hit by the bus. But anyway, so we went to a showing and we saw this couple, fantastic. You know, people they checked all the boxes. You know, they removed their shoes when they entered. They were very personable. They asked a lot of maintenance questions. They were very well, you know, soft spoken. Really presented really well, and we checked their, you know, credit and everything. We're ready to go. I was literally about to draft the lease, and then I just bad habit. I Googled, you know, the gentleman's name. And this article came up that, you know, he was involved in the hit and run. He escaped, and then K9 unit went looking for him, a criminal record, and
oh boy.
And I was like, holy smokes! Like, but I tell you, like, I deal with people on a daily basis, and like you establish a gut feel for somebody, and that gut feel was telling me like these are good people, like they're. So anyway, so I turned it into a dinner conversation. I said, like, what are we gonna do? And the kids were saying, well, I don't know. And you know, on the one hand, massive red flag. On the other hand, like, you know, your gut feel. So I said, you know what? Let's call him. Let's call him and see what happens. And I said, put him on speaker. And the kids were, please don't tell him that we're here. So anyway, so we called him, and I said, like, you know, Mr. So-and-so, we really like you as a prospect, but I found this article. What do you have to say? And it says, Peter, I'm very sorry, but it was me. It was a bad decision.
Jeez.
And we had an argument, my wife and I, that I didn't disclose. But I really like the property, and I didn't want you to disqualify us because of this. And I can tell you there's not a day in my life that I don't regret the poor decision that I made. And I get, you know, discriminated against when I look for a job or when I look for a house, as you can tell. So anyway, so we took that in, and I said, again, we had our little council, and I said, you know, we're trying to teach our kids, you know, how to be generous and how to be forgiving, and here's our opportunity to really put our money where our mouth is. So let's give it a try. What do we have to lose? It's an apartment, you know, a few bedrooms. So anyway, so. We told him as much. Say, we trust you. We trust your integrity. We want to give you a second chance. I told him about our kids, that we want to kind of, and guys, they have become the best tenants we have ever had.
Awesome! What a great story.
They have been. They check with us before they change a light bulb. They have, you know, they maintain the property. They look for ways of saving. They keep an eye on other tenants. And to me, and the reason why I'm saying that is that it reminded me how important it is to have the kids around, because, you know, we are learning ourselves and they're learning with us as life happens, right? And so kind of seeing them, you know, respond to this will be you know, they will remember it for life, right? Because it was it was such
Peter,
a,
you have your own story, and growing up and getting educated and coming to Canada and then going to Hungary, then coming back here and then working here and then buying properties here and now helping out families here. I mean, what a crazy, amazing story. Thank you for sharing this. And listen, we have to wrap up. I want to ask how people can reach out to you or what, but next time you're on, I want to talk to you also about some of the immigration stuff that you did your PhD on, because in Canada, we get a lot of educated immigrants in here. And I know you studied how we can maybe, is it better kind of leverage some of the immigrants, or why?
Well, it's just avoid wasting human capital.
Yeah.
Avoid people,
who
with
comes in with
driving cabs
yeah,
in Montreal.
someone coming in with a doctor or as a doctorate or something, and making better use of that. Okay. How can people reach out to you? What's the best way?
I think the best way is probably my my Gmail account. There are different ways which I think Strathallan can help people if the
So if
asset
someone's
is,
listening, so what is it that you can help people with? Outline it.
well, if people have existing assets, our company offers property management services for commercial assets.
So if somebody has a strip mall in Hamilton right now or something, they could reach out to Strathallan. You'll step in and see what you can do to bring the property to a higher level.
I personally can help people with if they want to set up a leasing strategy or asset management strategy, how to optimize how to increase value in their asset. I'm certainly happy to chime in. I always look for JV partners as well in the residential stuff. If you just want to have a second opinion and run something by me, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that's very kind. So you're going to share your Gmail account. So remember, we don't know who's listening to this podcast, so you have to screen people who might reach out to you. It's not like we know everyone who's listening to this, but okay, what's the best email address to reach out to you?
P as in Peter, P Kafka. Kafka is my last name, Kafka 75 at gmail.com.
So P Kafka, PKAFKA 75
at
gmail.com. Peter, we're going to do this more again. I have more to talk to you about, but thank you for sharing all this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so happy we crossed paths.
And thank you guys. The main reason why I wanted to come out was to thank you guys for putting this together, because this is this real estate is one of the few avenues that is left for middle class people or working class people to gain financial independence. So kudos to you for spreading the word.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Thank you. Hey everyone, it's Tom Kradza, and this is my third time trying to do this little ending of this podcast, so I'm going to make it quick. Peter is a great guy. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. We put together a report. It's on nomoremiddle.com is where you can get the report. www.nomoremiddle.com, and you can see income levels mapped against property prices there. I just cannot speak today. And what you will see in that report is absolutely shocking. So you can get your own copy of that at www.nomoremiddle.com. Thanks to Peter for doing that. We're going to have him on again to talk more about immigration and the use of human capital in this country and how we might be underutilizing all the great people who end up coming here. So I'm fascinated with that topic. Definitely want to have him on again to talk about that. But that's for another time. Until next time, your life, your terms.